Chris, I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. Welcome into the game here in Tuscaloosa.
I did. A lot of football, which is good. I hope you had a nice Christmas and Happy New Year to you and all the great listeners here.
No doubt, no doubt. And Chris, we want to look into a lot of different things, but we're now closer to this game, and I'm watching the experts in the desert. We call that Las Vegas. This line has expanded for Alabama up to 3 and even 3.5 places in some spots. That line is more than doubled now when we look at the confidence growing in Alabama.
Well, you got to remember that the line is not reflective of who the best teams are. It's reflective of the betting public. And, you know, I know there's been a lot of statistics that a lot of Alabama people, a lot of Alabama fans bet on their games. And so that's going to affect the line. And so what we do know is a lot of people are betting on Alabama. Is that, you know, a lot of national people that with Alabama's name, Alabama's history, is a lot of Alabama fans that are just confident. I mean, there are a number of reasons for that. Although I admit that I really rarely ever pay attention to the lines because, again, it really has very little to do with who the best teams are. It has to do with the betting public's perception of who the best teams are, and that's, you know, obviously completely different.
You know, Alabama has obviously made their way to New Orleans. They arrived this morning at 10 a.m., and they're getting ready to go through practice. I'm just kind of curious, knowing Nick Saban the way that you do, he's practicing at the Superdome. Dabo and Clemson is practicing at Tulane. Is there an advantage there that maybe just kind of becoming comfortable with the surroundings? I mean, is there something there that might be a little bit of a favor Alabama?
Not really. No, I mean, I think that he's always done that. He's kind of looked at, you know, the Superdome. He's usually practiced there whenever he's been there, whenever it's possible. You usually split it up, and it's pretty much what people do is they'll practice at, you know, because the Saints facility is not available, unless it were to be in a championship game situation and they were done. But so that's usually the way. It's one of the two, but it's really not. I mean, I think that, you know, certainly Alabama doesn't need any more. I mean, they know that dome, you know, frontwards, backwards. They know it as good as anybody. And I don't think, you know, Clemson not practicing in it, you know, is going to have any effect of, you know, you get a little bit of a feel and you like to have a little walk through the surface. So, yeah, you know, if you had the choice, you'd rather do it that way, but I don't think it's a decisive advantage at all.
Chris, let me go to this offensive line for Alabama. How can a play caller help Alabama's offensive line out against that talented front from Clemson?
Well, the way you help them out is that you try to get the ball out of the hands of the quarterback quicker. You try to run the football, have some run-pass options, and get him out running to where you force the defense to have to play the run first. You don't want to get in a third and long situations. If Alabama gets in third and long situation, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be a long night. So what you want to do is you want to keep that defense doing two things: making sure that they set the edge in the run game before they rush the passer. And if they can tee off on you, it's just that much easier. Think about it. If you have to secure the run before you rush the passer, it's going to limit your effectiveness, even though you got great pass rush ability. Two, I think you got to make them run. I mentioned this the past couple of weeks. You got to make them run laterally. You got to make them chase the ball sideline to sideline, wear them down a little bit. If you do that, then you really help your offensive line. You can get better angles. You can wear them out. That's the real key, because if you look at just player for player, Alabama's offensive line against Clemson's defensive line, that's an edge to Clemson. They've got better personnel as it matchups, at the line of scrimmage on that side of the ball. So in order to take that advantage and reverse it, you got to do just what I said. You've got to make that defensive line run and wear them out. If you do that, I've seen really good defensive lines get worn out. I mean, didn't you see Georgia do it against Auburn? Why was that? Well, there are two reasons. One, Georgia was able to force that defensive line to run, wear them out, and then offensively possess the football. So that's really the key. You can wear out that defensive front and get an advantage to your offensive line by making that defensive line do what they don't want to do, and that's chase and maybe, increase the tempo a little bit at times to get them worn out, to get a little bit of an advantage.
Let me go back to the conversation we've had multiple times, but I just want to – let me tell you the feeling that we're having here in New Orleans. The conversation among the local media from Clemson, Alabama, as you get together, you kind of swap information and you kind of, begin to share and, what does this team look like? Where's a weakness? Where's a strength? You kind of get some thoughts. The conversation that all of us have been having this morning is when you look at Alabama and Clemson, not only is this game for a chance to play for a national title, this is where Clemson can surpass maybe Alabama. We talk about the premier program in college football currently, not traditionally, not history, but just right now. Is that fair to say if Clemson beats Alabama and goes on to win the national title that they've maybe become the premier program in college football?
Sure, absolutely. If you look at it over a 2 or 3 year period, let's just take a 2 year period. You win the national championship back to back. It's not even a discussion. The team that wins 2 straight national titles has the best program over that 2 year span. Now, if you want to branch it out further, 3, 4, 5 years, that's where okay, well, wait a minute. Do you put more emphasis on now or do you put more emphasis on 3 or 4 years ago? But absolutely, I think it is a game, and everybody tries to write that history before the game. And if Alabama wins it, then you're looking at, all right, well, Alabama's won the title 2 out of the last 3 years and came close to winning it last year, and so the narrative completely changes. Well, now Alabama's got the best, So, it is very, very fleeting, and because Clemson won the title last year, if they were to win it this year, absolutely that's the way the narrative is going to be, and should be. That they have won it the last 2 years. They deserve the moniker, if you want to give it, as the best team in the country the past 2 years. It does not mean, however, like some people are going to write, well, the dynasty's over, and Clemson's past them. It's not, Alabama's not going to get back. Or that's what people are going to write, and I think that's where people overstate it a little bit. But, listen, how about if neither one of them win it? What if Georgia wins it? Then the narrative is going to be, Georgia's the program now. They won one. But, again, how far do you want to take it back? 1 year, 2 years? Clemson has been right there with Alabama the past 2 years. They've split national titles. It's reasonable to think that if either Alabama or Clemson win the title this year, they will be the team of the present, of the past, 2, 3 years that deserves the moniker of the best team in college football, the best program in college football.
Help us understand, coaches, when you look back at 2015, when Nick Saban outcoached Dabo out in Arizona and really pulled out, all the rook cards. And, when you talk about the standard as far as the onside kick, the way that, that worked out. I mean, the different things that he pulled out to take advantage. Maybe you flip the script a little bit. Maybe Dabo got him a little bit last year. So it's these two competitors that obviously it's a revenge game more than just the players. It's probably inside that coaching room as well.
Well, absolutely. And, how you go about preparing yourself as a coach, as a competitor, you absolutely want to get that advantage, and you don't want to lose. Well, no one would ever say it. They absolutely, what we just talked about, who has the best program and well, that's what you play for. That's what you compete for. That's what you put all that time all year round to do and to accomplish. I thought, to me, last year that the big difference was Deshaun Watson, and that was, to me, the difference. And, quite frankly, it was the difference 2 years ago. In a lot of respects, Clemson kind of outplayed Alabama 2 years in a row. And you're right, 2 years ago, I thought Saban stole an extra possession, made a big play in the kicking game, did a couple of things that kind of got the edge over Clemson, and that's why I think a lot of people look and say, well, wait a minute, Clemson's been a little bit better than Alabama the past 2 years. Alabama found a way to win 2 years ago. Last year it was close. Alabama could have won it. Clemson won it. To me, it's pretty even, and I think the one difference is the fact that Deshaun Watson was on the field the last 2 years. I think this Clemson program is to the point where it's not all about Deshaun Watson. The fact that they're here in the playoffs is an indication that they're recruiting on a par with the Alabamas of the world, and as good as anybody in the country. But, they don't have that X factor, that difference-making factor at quarterback, so they're going to have to be clean and close to their capabilities in all other aspects, where a dynamic playmaker at quarterback can kind of erase some of that. And yet, I do think that one of the big keys in this game is what quarterback is going to be able to make the most plays with his feet, and then with their ability to run it, it's going to create opportunities in the passing game. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and who has the advantage in this game. So I think this is, believe it or not, and the score may not reflect it, but I think that these two teams, Alabama and Clemson, these two teams this year are probably more evenly matched than they've even been in the past 2 years. And you can't get any closer in terms of a score the last two, but in terms of personnel and their styles, I think they almost mirror one another.
Let me go back to Kelly Bryant. What do you see in the young man?
Talented, confident, athletic, make plays with his feet, improving as a passer, but not the type of dynamic passer that Deshaun Watson is. They rely on the running game more, and the success out of the running game is going to create opportunities in the passing game. And if they don't run it as well, then they'll struggle in third and long. In essence, I think that is kind of what I'm talking about, that they mirror Alabama in terms of the quarterback and the style of offense and the playmaking ability. Huge athletically, big-time potential, big-time plays waiting to happen, but against really good defenses, it's all about the running game, and it's all about setting the running game up and getting the opportunities out of the passing game by getting opposing defenses to overplay the run.
Chris, when you look at their offense, it seems like when we talk about passing yards, I mean, they're like 2,000 yards less than what they did last year with Deshaun Watson. 41 touchdowns for Deshaun Watson last year, 13 this year for Kelly Bryant. It just seems, have they shifted their focus more to the strengths of that player and more of a rushing attack?
Absolutely. Kelly is, while a big guy and has the ability to stand in the pocket, he's not the passer that Deshaun Watson was. So for them, so they've completely transformed their offense. And again, it's more of a run-based offense. It's about Travis Etienne and Feaster and trying to focus those guys, and they'll work the short passing game with McLeod and Renfro, who was so effective last year, and Deion Kane. But absolutely, they run the football out of 3 wide sets, out of 11 personnel. So that is completely how they've changed their team. They're not a team that can go downfield, throw it as a pass-first team, and it's about when they throw it, not how much they throw it. They have to throw it a lot. They become increasingly ineffective. So they've recruited some good quarterbacks that I think will be good players, and I think this young man, Kelly Bryant, will be a better passer. But at this point, they're not going to win because of his passing.
Let me go to the conversation here. A lot of people in Tuscaloosa thinks that there should be a package for the backup quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, maybe give Alabama some more options in the passing attack. Knowing Nick Saban's tendencies and knowing him, I highly doubt that unless there's another variable that we're not counting in here, which is always possible. But do you think that Nick Saban might look at maybe opening some things up with Tua Tagovailoa, or do you think he's going to dance with the horse that got him there?
Well, you've got a package ready for him. You've got a package that you constantly work with him because you're one play away from him being your starter. And we know that can happen at any time. So you've got to prepare him as if, he's going to have to play, and you don't ever know what's going to happen. So there absolutely will be a package. With their willingness to go ahead and put him in and let him do it is going to really depend upon the circumstances of the game. If they're struggling and they are losing control of the game, then I could see that happening. But if they're not, why would you risk that and risk turnovers and risk mistakes? That would be the byproduct of having somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience. They have greater trust in Jalen Hurts and running the offense making good decisions, protecting the football. And I think going into this game, they're going to have a lot of design runs for Jalen Hurts. I think that the winner of this game is going to have a big day by their quarterback running the football. That's what I believe, by both design runs and improvisational runs. So do I expect it to happen in terms of a package? I do not, because, A, I do not anticipate the game getting out of hand, and that would be one scenario in which Tua could get in the game with that package. And the other scenario would be if, obviously, Jalen Hurts, were to go down with an injury. And obviously there's no way to predict that, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But in terms of having a package ready, absolutely, a package has already been in there. It's been in there all year long, and in terms of what they would have for him to do, I don't think they have a package in terms of we're going to definitely play him at this stretch or in this series or at this point in time in the game. But they have a package of things that he's very comfortable running, and they're comfortable in letting him run in the event that he has to play some or most of the game if it were to come to that.
Average, above average, below average offensive line? What do you see in Clemson's offensive line?
It's pretty solid. Mitch Hyatt, the left tackle, is a pretty solid player. He's a junior. The guard, there's a big physical run blocker, Hearn. The center is a more experienced guy, doesn't have great foot quickness, but understands positions and angles. Tyrone Crowder is another veteran guy that's a road grader in the run game. The right tackle, a little less experienced, Sean Pollard. And then they've got Ankrum, who's a little bit more fleet-footed, a little bit more of a guard build, quite frankly. But Pollard's a little bit better in the run game as a blocker. I think it's a good group. I think there's not a lot of holes. They don't make a ton of mistakes, and they do a really good job, obviously, with their tempo. So I guess the best way to describe it is their offense, the offensive line has a little bit of an advantage. That is, we were talking about last segment, kind of changing up the tempos and the speeds. That really helps your offensive line. It kind of gets the defensive line on skates a little bit. And just like a receiver knows where he's running and the defender has to counteract that, that's very much like what the defensive line has to do to an offensive line. So they play to that very well, their up-tempo style of offense.
Chris, this will be our final conversation before this game. You have been very confident in Nick Saban, and several times you've stated where the difference in the game is you just trust Nick Saban's preparation. We've talked about what makes him so good and given him this much time. As we're just now a few days away from this mega matchup, do you still feel the same way? Do you think the difference is certainly Nick Saban, and you still believe that Alabama will get the job done?
I think it is an advantage. I think that having that experience is a big plus in Alabama's favor. I think my concerns for Alabama would be on the offensive line against Clemson's defensive line. We've gone over that. I think that Jalen Hurts could be a big factor in, I think, their package that they have for him running the football, I think will be significant, and I think will be a factor in the game. So I do think the preparation, and I do think the fact that they can get some guys healthy. Certainly losing Dylan Moses, you don't want that. That's a big factor in being down some defensive guys. I see the defense as being challenged against this Clemson offense, but I think they can meet the challenge in the run game. I think that where the problems would be for this Alabama team is if they're down a number of men and they have some injuries. We've seen teams like Mississippi State, Auburn run the football. Nobody usually runs the football on Alabama. I think we'll see more of the run-stout defensive front Alabama in this game with health, assuming those guys are healthy, meaning I know they're going to play, but how healthy, how effective. That's going to be what I'm looking for, and how they're defending the run, and how they're winning or not winning on early downs. That's going to be pivotal. So that kind of what kind of comes down to me is what quarterback's going to make more plays. I think that's probably going to be Hurts. I think he's been in this environment. I think that's going to be huge, and I think Nick Saban's preparation. I would favor Alabama. I am not going to be surprised at all if Clemson wins. I will tell you up front, because don't think I appeared on your show before last year's championship game. I thought Alabama would win last year, and they didn't, obviously. So what I think, that and $3 or $4 will buy you a cup of coffee, I guess. But in my view, I think these teams are a little bit more evenly matched. So I'm not going to be surprised if Clemson wins it. They're very capable of beating Alabama. This is not like a huge upset if Clemson wins this game. They're very capable of beating them. I just feel that Alabama, their preparation, and I think their health. If this game was a quick turnaround, there's no way. I would not have liked their chances against this Clemson team. It would have been more Auburn-like, that game. And I think the big difference is the fact that I'm counting on them being healthy and being very well prepared and having a really good game plan that could ultimately be the difference.
You look at Hunter Renfro for a couple of minutes. In 2015, he had 7 catches, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. Last year, he had 10 catches for over 90 yards against Alabama, 2 touchdowns. Would you take Minkah Fitzpatrick and just lock him down in that slot and say, young man, you've done it to us 2 years in a row. You're not doing a third time?
Well, I think you got to do a better job of really defending him off the line of scrimmage. And, they'll blind him up in the slot so he doesn't get jammed. He's got good quickness, not great speed, but underrated speed, I would say, and very good quickness, and he's an adept route runner, and he catches everything. The reason why he makes big plays is, A, when people play zone against him, he finds the voids in zone coverage. And I think the other thing is you normally see a safety defending him, and you normally see the focus being on, we got to take Deion Kane out of the game, we got to take McLeod out of the game. I still think that the way you've got to defend this team's passing game is, look, if you can bring good pressure, you've got to prevent the big play, the deep ball with Kane, and you've just got to come up and tackle well against Renfro. The underneath stuff is not going to hurt you. What hurts you is the underneath stuff that turns into big plays because you don't tackle and you don't leverage the run well. I didn't think they did a very good job last year leveraging the run, the short run, the short pass and the run game last year in those situations, and it caused them a lot of problems. So the run after catch, when he catches it underneath and he's coming out of the slot, they've just got to converge on the football a little bit better and tackle better. And if you do that, I don't think there'll be a lot of big plays. But last year he ate him up because he got a little deeper, he worked down the seam, and they lost him in coverage. So I think they're going to have to do a better job with team defense. I don't know that I put Minkah on him the whole game because I think you want to have Minkah in a situation where he can make some plays against the run as well as defend those other weapons. If you overplay Renfro, the speed guys are going to hurt you big, and one-on-one that might be a challenge.
Certainly, Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com. Chris, I want to go to Oklahoma and Georgia and hear your analysis for that game because I know the game in New Orleans is going to be the one that we grab our attention. We'll have tons of coverage. But I got to ask you about Georgia-Oklahoma because that's a very intriguing matchup. What do you see happening in that game?
Well, I think the key is going to be everybody talks about, when Oklahoma's offense and Georgia's defense is on the field, strength versus strength. And I do think that Georgia, the key in this game when Georgia's on defense is how well they can defend Oklahoma's running attack. Oklahoma's rushing attack is a lot better than people know. People take offense and it's all Baker Mayfield. It's their running game that sets it up. And they force an 8 defender in the box, and then good luck trying to defend their passing game with an 8th defender in the box. So Georgia's ability to have success defensively is to be able to play quarters coverage and defend the run with 7. If they can do that well, they'll win the game, and they'll be able to control or limit the amount of big plays that Oklahoma can have. Now, the way this game is going to be ultimately decided is how well Georgia's running game attacks this Oklahoma defense and how well this Oklahoma defense can get off the field. If Oklahoma can control the line of scrimmage, run the football, reduce the possessions of Oklahoma's offense, kind of frustrate them a little bit, then Georgia will win the football game. If they get into more of a shootout and they have to play a little bit of a chase, use the basketball analogy, a fast-paced game, a fast-break game, then that's Oklahoma's favor, and Oklahoma will win it. So I kind of like Georgia a little bit. I think that the ability to play really good defense and maybe situationally get off the field a few more times and control the football on offense is going to be the key in this game.
Chris Landry, LandryFootball.com. Chris, talk about the website and what you guys are able to offer there. And certainly a lot of college football fans as we finish up recruiting, but really the bowl season, coaching searches, which I'm still expecting that once we get through these bowl seasons, we're probably going to have a big shakeup on the assistant coaches. There are going to be guys that are departing, guys arriving, guys leaving. And we've also got to deal with this 10th coach because that's going to add another element that I think a lot of us kind of forget about a little bit. That 10th coach will be added very, very soon following this bowl season.
Yeah, a lot of coaching movement still to come, and then obviously we've got the NFL coaching searches that are going to start Monday and Tuesday that coincides with this championship weekend. As a lot of these guys at the start of the new year are going to be let go, and that's going to have a trickle-down effect and with coinciding effect with the college coaches in the assistant ranks. So, yeah, we cover all of that and break down all the coaching moves and what's going on, the inside information in the college and pro scene. We break down every bowl game, film room breakdowns of every one of these games, players to look for, strategy, draft prospects, young players to look at. So we do that for you. If you're an NFL fan, we're breaking down every NFL game. We'll break down, obviously, all the playoff games, take you through all the way through the Super Bowl. What we're going to do as recruiting kind of gets into its second phase, we're going to eventually break down every prospect. For example, if you're an Alabama fan, we'll give you a scouting report on every player Alabama has signed, their strengths, their weaknesses, how they fit in, so on and so forth, as well as every other team across the conference in the country. We'll do that. All the NFL free agency, NFL draft stuff, who's coming out early, where they're positioning on draft boards. We're going to break all of that down for you. So it's non-stop football all year round. It just goes into the business phase, off-season of football. And then we got a great discount up on the website that you take advantage of by December 31st. So you've got just this week. You get the best discount we have. It'll take you through all of this off-season and all next football season, right around to next year at this time. It's the best discount we have. That's not going to be good starting January 1st, so you want to jump on that now. Folks, if you like football, you'll love LandryFootball.com. It's like having your own coaching and scouting department at your disposal for less than a magazine subscription.